Relay everyone. Let us pray. Our God, we are thankful to you this day for another time we can come into your presence. We always rejoice in these times when we can come together as a society to talk about the ills and things that bothers us and affects us deeply. This evening as we come, O God, to touch on the issue of gender violence and all the other scourge that comes with that. We ask, O Father, that your Holy Spirit will lead our conversation this evening. We ask that you will give our guest speaker utterance and clarity in the dissemination of the information she has brought us this evening. Help the conversation to not just be one way, but, oh God, that we would involve ourselves and engage in the conversation of what we can do as a people to become better. Bless this time, bless our efforts together. Thank you for the opportunity of collaboration. May this be a wonderful time for us this evening. In Jesus' name. Amen.
I would like to welcome everyone for taking the time to come to this evening's Belize Mixer. This is the first mixer we're having for the year. We usually have one per quarter for our members. And definitely this topic is very interesting, and you taking the time to be here shows that it's important to you. I would like to welcome our members. We have in attendance also staff from the chamber, staff from UWI, and some students. I will now invite Mrs. Bennett. She is the head of the University of West Indies Open Campus Belize, and she will be introducing our guest speaker today, Ms. Paula Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. And thank you for organizing this evening. We appreciate the partnership with the Chamber. I want to start off by recognizing and thanking, first of all, Pastor Senator Rock for always answering the call and for blessing our events, asking God to guide our thoughts and our dialogue. And before I go any further, I want to ask the beautiful people sitting over there with their nice red tie to come on up. I don't bite on Tuesday evening. I promise you. So come on up so we can all feel connected. And if you want, you can sit with the other people here. You can just. I also have to acknowledge the CEO of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry and her staff. But I want to say that the UWI Open Campus Belize enjoys a wonderful partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. We have for the past 5 years, and I know the best is yet to come. Thank you for always supporting our events and for, again, the wonderful relationship that we share. And now I want to welcome my colleague again and thank her, Dr. Paula Morgan. But from now on, I'll talk like Pamela. Dr. Paula Morgan, who hails from the Institute of Gender and Development Studies. She's the head of that institute, and we're very privileged that her calendar allowed her to join us this week. I don't know if maybe people in the house picked up a flyer that has been circulating, but there is a regional initiative called the Roaming Professor, and so there are 4 women, and if you happen to see it on Facebook, internet, whatever, you can find it. And what it is an initiative between the University of the West Indies, the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, and also the University of the West Indies Open Campus. And what's happening is that for the entire year of 2016, they will be roaming the Caribbean and speaking to the topic of, or the theme of exploring Caribbean feminism through history, culture, and movements of social change. And so when the Belize site, like other sites around the 17 territories of the Open Campus, was asked to host one of these lectures, I decided that the opportune time to do this was in March, because that's when we celebrate Women's Month. So what better time to talk about this in Belize? And so I tried to pin down one of the lovely ladies here, and their calendar would not permit them. And so I was asking Bennett, are your dates etched in stone? And I said, no, but the month of March is etched in stone. And so I wanted to keep my promise to other persons whom we had committed UWI to do an activity for this month. So I want again to thank Carla. Dr. Paula Morgan, who agreed to come here at this time so we can get that point. So as I said last night at the Belize Chamber, the first lecture, it is my duty and privilege to open the lecture series, and I'm very proud to say that around the Caribbean, Belize is the first site to host this lecture. So Belize will go down in the history of the university as being the first territory to hold the roaming professor lecture. And so, in addition to this last night, and we had a wonderful turnout, and I have to say, that it's good to see my staff member Ian here and Pastor Senator Rock and Chris in the back, but where are the other men? Why didn't you all bring some men with you? You tried, eh? I know you did. And so in Belmopan today, we had a similar lecture at the University of Belize, and it was very well attended by students from Ecumenical Junior College in Danville, students from Independence Junior College and of course UB, and there may have been students from Galen as well, and maybe take part a couple of faculty members. So we continue to try to get it around the country as much as we could. One of our aims here at the site is to set up collaboration with other stakeholders in our country. And I'm happy to say that the National Women's Commission, which I'm a commissioner, was our key collaborator in this issue. Again, there's a commitment for us to participate in the women's department activities for the month. So again, we collaborated. And then we had a collaboration of our national university, and tonight we have the partnership of the chamber with the. So I want to say before I hand over to Dr. Paula Morgan that in success of ventures like this that we've had in the last 24 hours, this is the third event, can only happen when we come together and we support each other. And I want to say that women, we have to support each other. Women have to support women. Agreed? Right? And men have to support women too. Right? Their fathers and brothers and uncles and sons and grandsons and so on. And the message is that we must support our men and we must all support each other, whatever we're doing. Life is beautiful, I know it's hard, but it's beautiful. It's a precious gift, and sometimes it's too short. And so we all have to do our part to make it a wonderful journey, wherever we are, and in whatever way we can. Because it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us. And as long as we remember that and we do our part, we will get where we need to get. Pledge for Parity was this year's theme for International Women's Day. And that translates into equal rights, including equal pay for equal work. I encourage you again not to just think about this, but to make it happen wherever you are. And that having been said, I'd like now to introduce you to my colleague, Dr. Paula Morgan. She's a senior lecturer and head of the Institute of Gender and Development Studies at the University of St. Augustine. Her primary focus of teaching and research has been gender issues in the Caribbean literature and the culture. She has published numerous articles on domestic violence, the interface of ethnic and gender relations, the construction of Caribbean masculinities, disability studies, and pedagogical approaches to literary and popular discourses. She has produced and/or collaborated on 5 movement publications, including The Terror and the Time, Banal Violence and Trauma in Caribbean Discourse, Louis Press 2014, and I want to say that there's a copy of her book in the back, and Christopher is still using it. Keep going. And so please feel free to have a look. There's a flyer that talks about the book, and they're on sale if anybody wants to buy them for their office or for your personal library. They cost $70, okay? So let us know if you would like to do that. Some of her other publications include Writing Rage on Massive Violence in Caribbean Discourse with Valerie Youssef from UWI, First Award 2008. Reassembling the Fragments, Voice and Identity in Caribbean Discourse, UWI First 2013. The Culture of Violence, a Trinidad and Tobago Case Study, 2013. And an online journal collection, both edited with valid wisdom and journal collection, in a fine Castle Childhood in Caribbean Imagine Nations 2010. Dr. Morgan is a former head of the Department of Liberal Arts, Deputy Dean of Distance and Outreach of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, and coordinator of the Literatures in English and the Cultural Studies graduate programs. She's the holder of a UWIC/Gordian Life Premium Teaching Award, and I ask you to put your hands together and let's warmly welcome Dr. Paula Morgan.
And I appreciate that you're taking the time to come. I'm going to try to summarize the lecture, which I've given twice already actually, and I have changed it somewhat to orient it towards this place. He says that he speaks about in terms of woundedness, something inside is laid wide like a wound, some open passage has cleft the brain, some deep amnesiac blow. So he believes that the encounter between worlds that produced the New World Caribbean societies created a terrible wounding blow to the psyche, and many of the problems that we suffer today are related to that deep amnesiac blow. So I'm speaking to you as a literary scholar and who's persuaded about the capacity of literature and the culture to unearth, to cause us to imagine and to unearth deep and enduring social issues. I'm going to give you one definition of gender-based violence, and then I'm going to skip several slides because I'm really just doing a summary here. Gender-based violence can be simply defined as violence that occurs as a result of normative role expectations associated with each gender, juxtaposed with the unequal correlations between genders within the context of a specific society. So I'm going to speak about something that is universal because gender-based violence is universal. But the main point of what I want to say here today is that in every single society, gender-based violence becomes specific and it is contextualized. And if we are going to try to resolve it, we have to understand our very own context. Now, let's think I'm talking about gender-based violence in Belize. Let me make a reference to a work program that we have in Trinidad. It's called the CPEP program, and it's a work program that is used to create work for the oppressed and the underemployed. Now, in the CPEP program, which is sponsored by government, that program has become so corrupted that we are told that unscrupulous men demand sex for work. And they go so far as to when they are tired of the women who are giving them sex for work, they tell the woman, we're done with you, you go back and send your daughter. And this happens not in Belize, I'm sure, but it happens in Trinidad, right? And in this case, this is a case of gender-based violence because it is because women are gendered in a particular way, and because of the notion that women are there to be used and that in a sense that they're expendable, almost like throwaway objects, that they can be treated this way. So what have we said? We said that gender-based violence is a global problem. It happens all over the world. Even though men are the most severely attacked targets, women are the most, men and children are also impacted. We are familiar with the sexual violence against impoverished women in employment scenarios. Also, in terms of armed conflict, rape becomes a strategy to dishonor the enemy and dilute the gene pool. Men are also sexually assaulted as prisoners of war, in prisons, in gangs, in attacks against gays and transvestites. We are now discovering that in order to be initiated into the gangs, girls are being required to submit themselves to gang rape. and it is seen as consensual because they want to be admitted into gangs. Gender-based violence takes a multiplicity of forms. Its most visible form is physical, rape, mutilation, murder, but it also includes verbal abuse, belittling, violation, and harassment. And it takes place in same-sex relationships as well as opposite sex, traditional societies, as well as in urban modern societies, in homes and institutions, in cyberspace that is becoming a big thing, in streets, in police stations and courts of law, and in the workplace. And it also occurs at every stage of life. No space or period of life is free of gender-based violence. My message today, based on my research, is that we cannot delimit this scourge to any single of its contributing factors. The propensity is to say it is due to this and it is due to that. Fundamentally, it is about power relations, and therefore it is multi-contextual, multicultural, multinational, and our task is to understand how it crops up in very specific ways in our very specific social order. So we are concerned with issues of the way in which gender is socially performed. What are the notions of the appropriate use of personal and institutional authority and power? Patterns of marriage, differential access to education, racism, poverty. We are concerned with ideologies, values and assumptions, as well as customs and beliefs and habits and traditions. And the thing I want you to take away, since it is not a one-cause-fits-all problem, neither can it be a one-intervention-fits-all solution. Now I'm just going to put up these couple slides, but I'm not going to talk about them too much because of time. I just want to say that the CEDAW Convention, which is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, has now seen gender-based violence as a human rights violation. It impacts the right of protection of women under the law, equality in the family, and the highest standard of available physical and mental health. Okay, so that is a framework. Okay, so this is the CEDAW Convention on Gender-Based Violence. Now, I wonder the extent to which we understand that the traumatic event that led to the formation of the modern Caribbean societies was indeed an economic event that had to do with labor relations. We talk about slavery all the time. Slavery was a mass migration scheme, and it was the most traumatic mass migration scheme in modern history. And we don't know the numbers because the figures are not available. But we are told that some 15 to 20 million enslaved Africans lost their lives. This is not to mention the near genocide of the indigenous races. These are not things that we have careful documented numbers about. But we are talking about a mass migration for economic purposes that really took the lives of millions of people. And it also generated an underlying trauma, the results of which are with us until today. Now, one of the key factors in slavery is that underlying trauma and the onslaught that slavery created in relation to the human spirit was very often worked itself out in human bodies. It worked itself out on the body. I want to reference a particular incident, a historical incident that happened near the coast of Jamaica. There was a slave ship, it was called the Zong slave ship, that was making its way from Africa to the New World. Because of serious overcrowding, this ship, when it drew near to Jamaica, encountered a huge storm. And the slave owners took the opportunity of the storm to dump slaves overboard. Why did they do it? Because the insurers would pay for cargo lost at sea. but it would not pay for people who had died. And therefore, we are told that some 133, again the records are not clear, to practically somewhere around 133 enslaved persons who were ill were dumped overboard alive. They were ill, they were weak, they were sick. They were dumped overboard alive because the ship's captain wished to benefit from insurance which would recompense the slaves lost at sea, but not the slaves who succumbed to disease. The jettisoning of human cargo was not unheard of, but it wasn't exactly a common event. What happened is that this Dong massacre became a test case, and it was an insurance case. And we are told that it was at that time that many of the modern insurance laws that operate in business practices today were laid down, because it was at this point that insurance companies began to quantify the human person in terms of money. What is the cost of a limb? What is the insurability of an eye? What is the insurability of slaves lost at sea? And the judicial judgment indicated, Lord Mansfield in his judgment, is what is this claim that human people have been thrown overboard? This is a case of chattels or goods, blacks and goods and property. It is madness to accuse these well-serving, honorable men of murder. They acted out of necessity in the most appropriate manner for the cause. The late Captain Collingwood, thank God because we have a God in heaven, when shortly after the ship arrived in Jamaica, Captain Collingwood died. Okay, fine. The late Captain Collingwood acted in the interest of his ship to protect the safety of the crew. To question the judgment of an experienced, well-traveled captain held in the highest regard as one of folly, especially when talking of slaves. The case is the same as if wood had been thrown overboard. So the judgment was that this was chattel. It was the same as if wood had been thrown overboard. This case, nevertheless, seemed to be such a heinous injustice that it was taken up by the abolitionists and became a test case in relation to the abolition of slavery. What am I trying to say is that that tumultuous event at the origins of our society really concerned labor, economics, and it created a trauma, left traumatic seeds that remain underlying and that remain with us until today. This is the specificity of our situation. In other scenarios, we are dealing even today in a contemporary sense with upheavals. So that unprecedented becomes more today in the same way that this event was unprecedented in its time. We now have today unprecedented wars, hostilities, mass migration, refugee crises, modern day sexual slavery, which once again, and Pastor, you will identify with this, it is the practice of trading in the bodies and souls of men. That is what sexual slavery is today. Unprecedented civil, economic, and geopolitical upheaval. I want to say, as is the case with slavery, and as is the case today, the vast majority of these unprecedented crises, when they boil down to gender-based violence. So we argue that the very materiality of the human body as a home for the human spirit is a blank slate on which to write messages which would otherwise remain mere abstractions. And much of these messages are in relation to labor. Migrants, and particularly illegal migrants, are particularly vulnerable to sexual harassment and exploitation in the workplace because they have no alternative recourse. When mass migration undermines traditional patriarchal power, creating dislocation and new employment practices which favor women, some men seek to reinstate their dominant relations in the home through acts of violence. The body becomes a site of correlation to the state on which dominance is written. The greater the societal upheaval, the greater the potential for violence. And this has certainly been the case in our urban, verdant coastal and island landscapes. So we have been brought here under extremely violent and violating circumstances. And the very act of imposing imperialism has been seen as a masculinist project, and we see there in the picture. This is this woman that is she represents the indigenous inhabitant, is seen as naked and supine. So these are the indigenous cultures. Whereas the man stands with a phallic symbol, stands over her, and of course there is the picture of punishing and brutalizing women. So the suffering and moodiness and anxiety generated by economic and employment issues, including Europe's criminal enrichment project, involved in inflicting near genocide and non-indigenous tribes, raping our soils, listen to the language, raping our soils, extracting the wealth of our lands for foreign consumption, establishing extremes of wealth and poverty, and leaving a substantial cross-section of our population still enduring structural inequity, lack of opportunity, belittlement, racism, and denigration. There's a large cross-section of our populations, no matter how hard they work every day of their lives, they will never be anything other than poor. It's a system that we have inherited, and it's a system that we have to decide, are we going to maintain or are we going to seek to address? The societal moves of the past will not erase themselves. None of these acts are far away from sexual exploitation. And when we need to add to that systems of racism and colorism, and as I've been saying, these function in a very odd way. So the most gracious and educated of us find ourselves all of a sudden accommodating racist thoughts, even though we know full well that the value of the human cannot be determined by skin color. Unbidden, unwelcome, irrational, these thoughts come on us to value the human person on the basis of race and ethnicity. It is as if inhabiting race gods which are socially perceived as undesirable, polluting, retrogressive, or on the other hand, as hypersexualized and lascivious, and that becomes even today a persistent cause of insidious trauma. We are still grappling with that legacy today. To what extent do these pernicious seeds bear fruit in contemporary practices of sexual harassment of the race and impoverished other in the workplace? In other words, let's look at in terms of labor. By virtue of the intersection of race, class, and gender, are some bodies reserved for marriage, domesticity, and reproductive labor, while others, based on the same intersection of race, class, and gender, are relegated to productive and sexual labor. So what then is the labor and employment scenario of today? And here are some of our issues. Our societies are rapidly evolving, and we are trying to work on what are acceptable gender identities for today. All women after centuries face obstacles to social advancement and upward mobility, while our men have been habituated to privilege. We have a different scenario today. Girls have been socialized to run with handicaps, and boys have been socialized to run with a head start. But the playing field has been leveled, and the number of male to females represented in this room sends a message. It's a signal. The girls are outrunning the boys hands down in the university, even in the hard sciences, engineering, and medicine. In the universities where I work, the girls are outnumbering the boys. The boys have simply stopped running, or they're running out by the gang violence. They're running on the streets. They are running in the alternative places where the education is left to knife and gun. They're becoming knife and gun technicians. That's what they're doing. So we have a serious labor and employment scenario looming. Multiple cases of intimate partner violence are related to work and employment issues, and I'm coming to a close here. In the longer lecture, I did an analysis of a fictional text by C.H. because I tried to get limited examples that looks at submerged historical traumatic events that determine the labor relations in that text and that culminate in domestic violence. I'm not going to do that now, even though it won't hurt, just to put up these are the submerged histories that operate in that text. And the point of the lecture is, which I will say it again, that we cannot see this thing in a simple and linear way. Every time we have to grapple with acts of violence, we are dealing with submerged or repressed. Sometimes they are historical traumas. There are elements that are working under the surface in order to impede or to impact or to erupt in acts of violence. In that text, which is very much related as a memorial, because this is a real-life young woman who was gone too soon. She was packed down, leaving behind loved ones who, I believe, are still reeling from her loss. As a matter of fact, we had a young woman in the lecture today who said, this happened a few streets from me, and her voice was breaking as she talked about the horror of what happened a few houses on the same street that she lived. So I am just offering this intervention as part of a concerted effort to join the work of dedicated professionals and activists in this land who are grappling with these issues. So this woman was the 25-year-old mother of a 4-year-old son. I offer this as an example of media discourse, and I offer it as an example of what happens when you try to analyze domestic violence situations in a linear fashion that does not take into consideration the array of complex issues that conceivably have fed into the situation. So the headline read, female customs officer savagely stabbed. The report goes on to note, she and her husband got into a heated domestic dispute. Now in that line alone, there's all kinds of codes. For one, they foreground she. Now when you foreground something in a sentence, it puts a greater weight of liability. So she and her husband got into a heated domestic pursuit. Formulating that sentence in that way alone invites us to say, well, that is husband-wife business. Is that said here? The police say that all the time. I ain't able with husband-wife business. So it relegates it to the private domain in which law enforcement agencies are reluctant to meddle. The extract reads, and I will not read it because you will read it. There it is. And it fits to our analysis of standard media coverage of domestic violence cases, and I will not read that either. So I'm going to say now. The report on the surface appears to be deceptively simple, informing the public of who, what, when, where, how. So you already see how it is linked to labor relations, okay? You see it there. Now, what it does, it in fact masks a veritable beehive of norms, ideologies, and assumptions. The majority of them are false. And these are some of the assumptions that are reflected in what appears to be a very simple who, what, when, why, how newspaper report. There's the assumption that men as the de facto heads of households should earn more than and should exercise rule and dominance within the home based on their earning. Right? So the person who has more money calls the shots. But women, through acquiring education and succeeding in their careers and jobs, are usurping male privilege. All of these are employment and economic issues. The women thereby emasculate these men who may as a result take violent action in their frustration and in their attempts to keep them in their bliss. The onus is on the woman to avail themselves of the domestic violence legislation to secure their well-being. The legislation is readily available, and the police and the judicial system and will secure their well-being. Real policies there. Women frustrate the attempts of police to protect them by withdrawing charges and hence become accomplices in their abuse and must bear a measure of liability for their death. The successes of Karen Fullerton are comprehensively itemized, and only the last line discloses that her common law partner was unemployed and financially dependent. The tacit appeal to a range of commonly held and unquestioned assumptions and the construction of media discourse combined to generate understanding, if not sympathy for the perpetrator, and a measure of blame for the victim. It's based on a series of assumptions. I argue that apart from even debunking the majority of the shared assumptions, good women they submit to abuse even at the risk of their life. It is wicked women who retaliate. When you retaliate because something is wrong with you, the chief of chance construct herself as strong and be able to endure while the abusive partner was needy and brutalized by past and present life circumstances. To what extent was she seeking to live up to stringent differential social standards of acceptability? I'm convinced that newspaper reporting, by probing the range of complex positive issues, when asking the simple questions, who, what, when, where, how, will do a far greater service in terms of informing and educating the populace, far more so than echoing facile social impulses of victim blame for escalating violence in a season of societal change. So this is my contention. And this is my there was spaces and gaps because this is about 40% of the lecture, but I trust it was coherent enough. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dr. Morgan, and I must apologize for the misspelling on your name. You had it right before. This time we have a questions and answers section. If anyone has any questions for Dr. Morgan.
In regards to gender equality, the financial aspect of it, let me go a bit personal. In regards to my common law wife and I, we tend to go half-half in our expenses. Everything that comes in the house, we tend to go half-half. So I know a friend of mine that usually he works and his wife works as well. His wife, she believes that she needs to save that money for herself, and still he needs to make all expenses of the house just because he's the man of the house.
Yes.
What would be your opinion on that in regards to that?
It doesn't seem fair to me. It doesn't seem fair to me. I met a woman who said to me, she said, what is his is mine, and what is mine is mine. I'm too insecure for anything other than that. What is now happening? I'm just down here and I'm not seeing properly. Yeah. What seems to be happening now is, you see, you have new roles impinging on old roles. And what seems to be happening is that there are many young women who are exacting almost revenge for the injustices of the past. And that is not fair. It's not fair. I don't believe it is fair. I have friends, so I believe in this time, the horse done boat is not going to go back to how it was. So this is the time that women have to seriously adjust their expectation. I say you could buy 2 or 3 houses, what you're looking for a man to carry and put you in house for, that is not what you need. Okay? So I don't think it's fair. But I think that the negotiation has to continue. And I think a lot of the hurt of these women has to do with how badly they were treated in their homes. And therefore they want to exact revenge now. Revenge ain't gonna help nobody. Yeah? When you're lonely and you're isolated and you're looking for somebody and you end up picking up some scrap because you absolutely need somebody because you chase away this one and that one. Always not gonna help you. How not gonna warm your bed? Ain't gonna work. Any other questions? Has it been taped?
Yeah.
Okay, you have to go.
This is in regard to you saying that women have kind of outpaced men in our society. Yes. I should say that I'm a volunteer in Belize and I'm from the United States.
Yes.
I've been here for a year and a half. And there was a pastor that said to me that women, similar to what you said, are outpacing men, and men are kind of sitting on their curves, sitting on their behinds, not really doing much. And he said, what's going to end up happening is that urban communities, at least this is happening in the States, his theory was that this will happen here as well, that this will turn into women dating other women and ostracizing men because men are not on the same level as women emotionally or intellectually or working. And I was just wondering what your thoughts on that would be.
Right. That is a very interesting notion. I have a friend, she's actually a famous feminist, Caribbean feminist. Her name is Merle Hodge, you must have heard about her. And Miss Merle always says, they're underdeveloped, they haven't evolved. That's right. So she buys that notion that somehow men are underdeveloped, they haven't evolved, they're not human enough, you know, and she talks about it. I don't agree with that. I believe that we have been under the scourge of dominance relations, and that men have been dominant in relation to women. I do not believe that dominance relations will work any better if women are dominant in relation to men. I believe that complementarity is what is required. But we have had centuries of dominant relations. And sometimes, well, I know, for example, even where I work at the university, it's now emerging that the best man for the job is a woman. Yeah? And if it, I'm telling you, the best man for the job is a woman. And if it continues like that, we are going to have severe social problems. And therefore, it is not enough for us to just simply try to usher the woman into some golden age or golden space. We have to sit down and systematically work through the strategies that will account for the survival and the well-being of all of the people. Because hear what? The majority of the women sitting here are going to have sons. I came from a female-dominated home. I didn't have one son. I have 2 sons, right? I have 2 now fine sons. But some of those sons led me a merry dance. One of the 2 sons, he led me a merry dance. And until I learned to understand the burgeoning man and the issues that he had as a man, I would have considered myself successful. I don't care how many degrees and how much book you write when you had breaking over your child. It doesn't pan out. I had to learn him and what he was going through. I had to learn to wait for my man-child to develop. He's a fine man today. But I had to learn him, and I had to wait, and I had to bruise my knees. That boy taught me how to pray. He's a fine, I'm telling you, He taught me how to pray. I wouldn't have been, man, if I had just had my daughter, I would, oh, these foolish parents, they don't discipline their children. I would have had a lot to say. He helped me and he taught me how to pray. And it doesn't matter how you want to be all, the radical feminists say that, we don't need men and so. Nix that. Forget it. We need men. And we are producing men. And listen, we should not be producing pseudo women, We need to produce men. And thank me for this. I do believe that men and women are different. I just believe that. I believe that maleness and femaleness, they are different qualities. And the complementarity will not work if our women become mannish and our men become womanish. I believe that the complementarity and the balance between men and women who are confident in themselves, it is a beautiful thing. It's a hard thing to work through. Taken me decades to get it, but I'm getting it and it's a beautiful thing. Okay? Sure. Pastor, I believe
I can talk about the rest of it. Is that all?
It's taping.
Oh, yeah, taping.
Yes, please, I'm sorry. No, listen, when I say, and this is a scholarship, but when I say I believe, this is two different things. I have my personal conviction. If you ask me the question, I share with you my personal conviction.
Dr. Norman, thank you for another insightful presentation. I think you said it somewhere, but I'm trying to understand the paradigm shift of what you see in our society. I suppose you see this in Trinidad. I see in Belize the girls getting more education than the boys. I am trying to understand if that's a social definition, or does that have is it something that is emerging as a new direction?
Definitely, the girls are outperforming the boys in terms of education. I think that what has happened is our social order has changed. There was a time at which we valorized men for their strength, for their impulsiveness, for their capacity to go out there and fight, hack down trees, build a house, kill an animal, drag it home. We value male strength. Even in terms of our boys, we allow them to run free. We tell the girls, sit down, behave yourself, play with your little toys and what do you think, if you think you're a boy or what? We have socialized our girls into a series of skills that have now become useful in this age. Boys have been socialized into a series of other skills. So the industrial, the girls now are stronger in terms of the social skills. They are stronger in terms of suppressing their emotions and disciplining themselves. Some of the boys, you see it in schools, you make these big hulking boys, they try to sit on behind those little desks, and discipline their bodies and discipline their minds to the work. It's more difficult for them. But these are the skills that we need to run the present knowledge society. You don't need as many people to cut down trees, the machines doing that. So we have a problem. I don't know how it's going to be resolved. I can't say, but I know that there is, it was after in the wake of World War II, when women went out to work, the men went to fight. They were doing, the man thing. The women went to work. Then the men came back, and they had to discipline. They had to come now and compete with the women for work. I also want to say, Pastor, some stuff that is happening. Sometimes some of our very highly paid and highly educated women don't have control over their earnings. Sometimes, I remember speaking to a registrar of births and death. She said, well, the story I have here in my register is the doctor and the plumber, the female doctor and the plumber. The women are marrying men who are earning far less. There's serious income disparity. And I'm afraid some of the women are feeling that the person who has the money calls the shots. And the men are saying, no, the person who has the strength will fix it. So, and that's part of what is happening. I believe complementarity and mutual respect. Now, what we do have, like, I have a notion, again, research. I have been researching this for a very long time. So, the research has taken us that far. I have the notion that my sons that grew up with me, knowing me from the time they opened their eyes as an independent professional, will have a different notion of what to expect from a woman than, say, a male child of a decade or two ago. So I believe that slowly things will evolve, but there is currently a problem. And that kind of blaming victim is because it's more important to know how to think about it differently. You can't castigate them. You can't castigate them. They don't know. So you have to have training, you have to have sensitization, you have to get people to see the power of this force. When they reproduce that discourse, what impact is having on the social order. The work has to be done. And then the research doesn't have to stay on the street. It has to roam, like how we roam in here and sharing our research. And then we too, the academics, have to find a way to just speak normal and ordinary. We don't get too stuffy and joints and talking in big words, because I'm not that nobody. It will just stay and rust to the pages in the book. Okay, so that's what I think.
And thanks for a wonderful presentation. My question is regarding the healing process. How do we go about healing? You talk about the submerged hurts and the historical traumas, especially for children who are descendants of a family where there has been abuse, and particularly in a case where a woman has moved on with her young children, leaving a father who has been abusive and trying to have a better life. How do we go about making it better for the children so they don't repeat that cycle?
It is extremely important for us to affirm the children. Do you know how many children come and say to their parents, this person has interfered with me, that person molested me, and you know what the parents, even the mother, say? You're too wicked, you're too bad, you brought it on yourself. I have read of young children who can express themselves only the way they express themselves. Some young children have brought pieces of art showing inappropriate acts, showing in the way that they can show. And they've been punished for drawing bad things because the man, we heard that I'm repeating this. It was Anita who spoke about the situation of a child being made to lick contents of the father's private parts. Right? Now, this man obviously wants to experience this and does not care that he's ruining a child. Time was when you knew things to be wrong and you did things and you know that what you're doing is wrong, you hide it. Something has shifted so that, I use the expression when I was speaking to Mrs. Bennett, I said like everything is everything. Like things that we knew we had shared values. This is wrong. You need to protect your children. I'm not saying that people didn't do wrong things, but I'm saying that even the line between right and wrong is shifting. There are people who are going to fight for their right. And you're going to see it happening very soon. There are people who fight for their right to love children. You know what love means in that case? Listen. There has to be a way for us to begin to engage again matters of moral and ethical values. And particularly ethics and morals in relation to children. Yeah? There was a time, I remember when I was growing up, and I wanted to go to the beach with my older teenage aunts and uncles. And my aunt was saying, no, you're a child, stay home. There was a boundary line. Yeah? Is there a boundary line now between child and adult? Are you seeing what children are wearing? The exposed and what? Do you understand what I'm trying to say to you? Yes. There were lines, there were values, there were assumptions, and we shared them. I am not saying that people didn't cross the line, and at least when they crossed the line, they really crossed it. Now the line gets wiggly, woggly down the road. So people don't even know when they are crossing the line. So you ask, what can we do in terms of healing? Listen to the children. Children speak in the language that they can, the simple art. Sometimes their behaviors, they come and rub up on you in an inappropriate way. You need to listen. You need to, instead of beating them and pushing them away, listen to the children. Secondly, allow people who have been abused. When people are abused, they have been objectified. They have been taught. They have been treated as if they are things. Allow people to speak and to tell their stories, because when they do, you are saying to them, you are important. You deserve to be valued. You have something to tell. I am going to listen to you. That's what a lot of research does, It's listening, It's understanding. It's analyzing. It's peering into people's scenarios. Particularly allow people to speak and narrate. I was delighted today when we went to the Belmopan. And in both cases, even here, something about this talk has created a safe place. We had people standing up and saying, one or two stood up and they said, my friend, but by the time they reach 3 sentences, their voices break in and the tears are beginning to fall in. I'm a friend. They themselves, what advice would you have me give to my friend? People began to speak about hers. Another girl was so delighted with her. She spoke about 7 between ages of 5 to 7, I think. She had been abused repeatedly by a male relative. She said one day the man was abusing her in the ocean. And he was so busy doing whatever he was doing. He nearly drowned me. He didn't care that I almost drowned in the water the other day, and I knew he didn't care. I realized he didn't care about me, so I told my mother. My mother didn't go to the police, but my mother fixed him so good. And she said, she spoke about what the mother did and how the mother reacted and how the mother believed in her. And she said, because of that, because my mother believed, she said, I have a 2-year-old girl, and I have taught her everything we need to know about appropriate touch. And so she was able to say she could hardly talk. She was able to say to somebody at a year and a half, don't touch. Yeah? And she said, I have taught her. So in the same way that the hurt can be transferred intergenerationally, the resistance to this, the rejection, the self-assertion that says, stop, don't. Yeah? Like I have a 18-month-old granddaughter. When you do anything that she doesn't like, I don't mean in terms of abuse. If you just do anything she doesn't want, she says, no, don't. You see that? Very useful for children, even at a young age. Now she's just been her defiant 2-year-old self. But the fact that you can say, no, don't, is something that children need to know that they can validly say. Notion that you have to respect your elders and do everything the elders tell you to do. Okay, they have to be taught to draw the line and to say, in the situation we had men who were broken and hurt, and I believe that they went away.
We have Mr. Christopher Ketch, with his hand. Thank you.
I don't think I introduced myself before. For those who may know me, my name is Christopher. I'm a membership program administrator from the Chamber of Commerce. First of all, allow me to give you the vote of thanks. Very short vote of thanks, but I know you are hungry. First of all, thanks to Ms. Jane. Very nice to meet you as well. And the UWI Belize Campus for giving us the opportunity to partner with you guys in offering this info session, and also most importantly to Dr. Paula for coming here tonight. I know personally that I grab information and not only grab it but will ensure it's a positive when I go back home. I know that I should tell my common wife every night, I iron better than you. So, if women can do it, men can do everything as well. So I strongly believe in equality. Lastly, I would like to thank members of the chamber who came out tonight. I know you guys tend to have a busy schedule, so thank you very much. And last night is CCI staff. Thank you very much. And we have some light refreshments at the back. So before accepting, you need to take some. Thank you.
I want to call Assistant Aikman to the floor and Dr. Morgan. We have a small token of appreciation.
Thank you so much for the stuff. It's been very amazing. I would like to know where you are going to be working. I'll go to the microphone and
I said, thank you so much for this talk. It's very enlightening, and I would like your advice on how we can get the men to promote.
We have a lot of snacks at the bar, so please help yourself, do not leave without taking a bite, and you have some drinks.
Good here. How did you find out? Alright. That's good. Yeah, because we were yesterday the Bliss.
I know.
Bro, it was really
I
good.
forgot that was happening there.
Man, they had like a 2 hour question and answer session there.
You know,